Hi, and welcome to STEM Day Wednesdays and Fall into STEM, a program sponsored by the Academy of Applied Science and the Young Inventors program. We're happy that you've joined us today. For the next 4 Wednesdays in the month of October, we're going to celebrate fall and all things ooey, gooey, creepy, slimy, sweet, tricks, treats, the things that we enjoy here in New England as we see the change of the seasons and the changing of the leaves. Today is our first session, and we're glad that you're here with us to work and to play and to explore a little bit. So I'll be doing one activity with you today, and you can also refer to our Apple Engineering resource page with more directions about this specific activity and some extension activities that can allow you to further explore with apples while you're at home. Everything we have today you should have at home. You don't need a whole lot of materials, but we'll go over them as well. And as always, if you feel like I'm going too fast, you can stop the video, pause, take a few minutes to work on what you need to work on, to get what you need to get, and then come back and press play again when you're ready to start working. So welcome. And today's topic is Apple Engineering. So today you're going to tackle several engineering challenges to test your design and build skills, as well as critical thinking. For all these activities, you may wish to think about your designs and think about the problem at hand before you dive in. So you may want to have a piece of paper and a pencil on hand so that you can draw things out, write down your ideas as you go. So for today's activity, a few materials that you are going to need at home to do to work with us are some apples, a couple, 3, 4, maybe, depending on how many of the activities you want to do. If you don't have apples, you can use mini pumpkins or gourds or even some squash or zucchini or anything that's kind of roundish and not too large would be great materials. Even some balls that you may have around the house would work just fine for some of these activities. So the focus of today, we are going to do how many pennies does it take to pull an apple up an incline plane. So to build we're going to first need to build an incline plane, and then we're going to need the materials that we will use for the actual activity. So again, the apples, or you could pull a pumpkin or something else up the plane. You'll also want to have several books or boxes, something that you can stack to kind of make a tower or to create a high spot on a flat surface. Maybe the table or working on the floor would be a great place to do this activity today. All right. You're also going to need a small container, like a yogurt container would work great, a plastic cup, a paper cup, something that you can poke a hole in, but something about this size would be great. You're also going to need some scissors. You can use string. So I have yarn, ribbon, other string that you may have around the house. And it looks like I have a buddy that's going to be joining me today. You're also going to need some weights. So we talked about using some pennies. Other coins would work well, trying to find something the same. So if you can use all pennies or all quarters. Beans, dried beans, if you have dried beans, those can act as weights. Lego bricks also could serve as your weights, as long as you're using the same size Lego brick would be the goal, so that you have a more accurate measurement. Rocks would work as well. A little not as accurate, but you could see how many rocks it might take as well to pull your apple up your incline plane. You're also going to need a rubber band. And then we talked about some scissors. If you have a hole puncher, that may also work, but we need to punch holes into our plastic or paper container. So if that's going to work for you, that's great. The final thing that we need is you need something to act as your incline. So something to serve as a ramp. So maybe it's the lid of a large box. I'm actually going to use a baking sheet. This one's pretty worn. We make a lot of cookies in our house, but something that's flat and smooth and thin that you can use as your ramp. So the lid of a box, the lid of maybe at the top of a large Tupperware bin that maybe you use for storage, a removable shelf, something like that would work great. Make sure you're asking an adult at home for permission to use some of these items before you begin. All right, so let's get started. So Thomas, how many pennies do you think it takes to pull an apple up an incline plane?
I don't know, 100.
Okay, we're gonna say 100, and we're gonna test and see what might happen. I think that's a great guess. So before we start, let's talk a little bit about what an incline plane is. Do you know what an incline plane is?
Sort of.
Sort of? What do you know?
It's like a ramp.
Kind of like a ramp. That's exactly what it is. An incline plane is one of 6 simple machines that we use to make work easier. So if you joined us for some of our Yip at Home series and we talked about pulleys in one of our activities where we did a pulley to rescue Rapunzel, that is another simple machine. And we've done, there's levers, wheels and axles, and incline planes. So an incline plane is just a flat object like a board or a cookie sheet that's tilted so that one end is higher than the other. And the incline plane helps reduce the weight of an object. So think about if you were trying to lift a heavy object, like a gallon of milk, vertically right off the ground, from the ground, and you're just trying to lift it straight up, right? You're supporting the whole weight of that whole gallon of milk. But if you slide the jug of milk up a ramp, right, some of the weight is now supported by the ramp, which makes it lighter and it's easier for you to pull up. So this you may have seen, if you've studied ancient Egypt, you may have seen that this was one of the way that the ancient Egyptians used to build their pyramids. They used incline planes and ramps to help get their big bricks and heavy materials up each level of the pyramid as they built. So to do this activity, to find out how many pennies it takes to pull an apple up the ramp, first we need to build our incline plane. So let's do that together. All right, so first we're gonna take, and I'm gonna push this back so we can see a little bit better. We're gonna do this on our dining room table, but you could also do this on the floor or even outside if you have a flat place to work, would all be appropriate spaces. You do need a little bit of space to make this, to do this activity with us this afternoon. So we're gonna take our books. I'm using 4 books right here, 4 of my favorite cookbooks. But what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna use the books to make our incline plane. Try and you wanna maybe make it about 5 or 6 inches high, and that's something you can play around with, is does making your incline steeper or higher make a difference? So that's something I'm gonna let you test at home. But about 4 or 5 books should do the job. Then you're gonna lay your incline, whatever you're using for that, so that it's tilted and so that you have made,
That is not
there you go.
tall at all.
That is not tall at all. Okay.
It needs to be tall.
It needs to be taller.
Tougher.
I'm gonna turn this way so that we have some room to hang that out. And I actually think, Thomas, could you go grab another cookbook for me or another book from the counter for me? Because I am gonna need something to kind of support the incline so it doesn't slip down. If it starts to slide that way, you may wanna put something at the end here to help support it. You do wanna make sure that you have a little bit of space to hang down right here on this end. That one would be great. Okay, our new library book, sports. Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna leave that. That'll be a good anchor right here for us to support our incline plane. So now we have a good steep plane right here that's stable without support. So the next thing we're gonna do is we are going to take our container and we're gonna make this into a little basket to hold our pennies. So if you want, Thomas, do you want me to do this or do you want to do this? We're gonna poke 2 holes one on each side kind of the top of the container, so we can make like a little handle for our bucket. If you need some help because it's slippery, I can do that for you. Watch your fingers. If you want to check with an adult at home before you're doing this part of the activity, it's a great idea. If you're using sharp objects like scissors or maybe a hole punch.
Or a knife. Wait, can I have that hole punch?
If you want to go find the hole punch, you can go find the hole punch.
That's really easy.
Okay, great. And then in the meantime, I'm just going to cut a small piece of string. In the meantime, you found the hole punch. Okay, so you work on that, and I'm just going to cut a small piece of string right here. So not too long, but just a small piece. Great, and you want to do one on the opposite side of the cut. Right directly opposite. Fantastic. So now I have my 2 holes, one on either side. Okay, then I'm going to take a small length of string that I cut a minute ago while Thomas was punching, and we're going to thread this through the cut. So that basically we're making like a handle on a bucket, and we can just tie a little knot at the top. You don't need a lot of space there. Can I tie? Do you want to tie?
About at time?
Yeah.
No, actually.
Okay. Okay. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm going to take this apple because I think it's the cutest. It even has the little leaf and the stem on it.
Yeah, that's because it's the smallest.
It is a small one. You can play around with different sizes of apples, different types of fruits if you want. We could try the pumpkin next.
Why? Okay.
Do you need some help with the tying? Okay, you're doing great. So now I have my little bucket. Okay, so I thread the string through the middle using our 2 holes, and then just tied a knot at the top. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside for a second. The next step is to put the rubber band around the apple. You may need to loop the rubber band several times depending on the size of your apple and the size of the rubber band that you're using. Okay, but you want it to be fairly tight around your apple. Okay, we have our apple with our rubber band. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to cut a longer piece of string, maybe about your arm length, a little bit longer. Go ahead and why don't you cut it, or maybe even a little longer. There we go. Cut it right there for me. Perfect. So a little bit longer, maybe 3 feet or so. Okay. You're going to tie one end around the rubber band on your apple. So I'm actually going to lift the rubber band up and slide the yarn through so that it goes under the rubber band, and it's kind of going to hold the apple, and then I'm just going to tie a knot right here so that I'm connecting this end of the string to the apple. And just tie a tight knot. Perfect. And I might need to push my rubber band up again so it's kind of right around the midsection of the apple, like a belt. Okay? Excellent. Oh, look at that. That's pretty cute. Now what we're going to do is, can you tie that end to the other loose end to the string? And actually, you're going to have to pull it because we do want your bucket to be kind of hanging down. So you don't want it to be resting on the table.
So then when you tie all that string?
Well, I had some extra just in case. I didn't know how much we were going to need, but it's always better to have more than not enough. So why don't you tie it so that the bucket will hang just over the edge of the plane. So can you tie a knot right there? Yeah, I'll hold it up for you. Pull it maybe a little bit more. Perfect. That's great. Okay, and you may need to double knot it so that the knot doesn't slide. Good. You want to cut off the string right here for me? We don't have quite the tail on it. Perfect. Great. Okay, so now we have our bucket kind of hanging over the edge, and our apple is now positioned onto our incline plane. So now it's penny time, or whatever you're using as your weights. We're going to count and see how many pennies it takes to pull the apple up the length of our plane. Go ahead, start dropping away. And count while you're doing it.
1, 2,
see if we have enough.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 23,
Ooh, it's moving.
25, 26, 27, 28. Oh, there it goes. 29, 40, 41.
Okay.
42,
Okay, stop for just a second. I'm going to slide this over, okay, because right now we're already resting on the table. So we actually need this to be a little bit, I'm going to tilt it up a little bit higher.
I can get another book.
Or is it going to pull? Hold on. Take some out. Can we get another book? Do you want to make sure? Because as this gets heavier, I think that might be enough, because look what happens if I raise the incline plane. Look at the apple. It's moving. Right? Good. Make that even higher. So let's start down. Do you remember how? Oh,
wait,
so let's
chip it again.
So we can start over again, but you can see how this works. All right, you're gonna see how many pennies it takes for your apple to slide to the top, and you may need to make some adjustments, just like we did. We needed a little higher incline so that we had enough space for our bucket to hang off. Maybe try hanging it off of a table. That could also give you a little more distance for the bucket to move and to pull the string. Okay? So again, things that you can do as you approach this activity is, what was your hypothesis? We thought it might take about 100 pennies to pull our apple. I think it took a little bit less. What we were about 39?
No, we were 40.
What happens if you change the size of your object? Like, what would happen if I used a mini pumpkin instead? Or a bigger apple? Would that make a difference? Does it matter how tilted my ramp is or how flat it is? And does it matter what weight I'm using? Would it make a difference? Do you think that it would use the same amount of quarters as it does pennies? These are all things that you can do to change and keep experimenting to see how many of one object does it take to pull another object up your incline plane. What happens if you take a bite of the apple? Would you need more or less pennies? You can take a bite.
Less.
Less? Why?
I don't know.
Think about why it might be less. Maybe the apple will weigh a little bit less.
Yeah,
if you take
less.
a bite.
Yeah.
Try it with the apple core. So there are lots of things you can do. And again, in our Apple Engineering activity page, there are even more extension activities, things that you can do with apples and fall harvests. You can make an apple volcano.
What?
You could make an apple toothpick tower. And you could also watch dancing apple seeds and have a dance party at home. And try it using pumpkin seeds or raisins or grapes or marshmallows. So the sky's the limit. We've given you